Hello and welcome to the Modern Digital Enterprise, the digital transformation podcast from Anexinet, part of the Anexinet Podcast Network. Today we're going to be speaking with Anexinet VP Ryan Benner about what your organization can do to ensure it's flexible enough to accommodate the surge in your remote workforce necessary to keep the business running and employees safe during the coronavirus pandemic.
Hey, this is Ryan.
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for joining. Before we begin, could you just talk about your background a little bit and how you got to where you are at Anexinet?
Sure. So my background, I started in this industry probably 20 some odd years ago now as a network engineer working at an enterprise, building and supporting networking technologies. So that expanded into security as well. After a few years of that, I decided to go into the consulting side and started working in consulting probably 15 years ago. In that time frame, I did a lot of work in networking and wireless and security, collaboration, unified communications, and really worked across all of those areas, both as an engineer building those technologies, and then as an architect going out and architecting those technologies. But over that time, I've taken on more of the architect and consultant type roles and less of the actual hands-on engineering, and then spent probably the last 5 to 6 years really focused on just building great teams that can architect and deliver technologies across the entire IT stack.
Perfect. Thanks so much. The question is your organization flexible enough to accommodate the surge in your remote workforce needed to keep your business running and employees safe? So it would be great if you could just talk about what Anexinet is able to provide in that area, what sets us apart in providing that solution, and how an ideal remote work strategy works.
Yeah. Some big questions there.
So I threw a lot at you at once.
I guess to start, what kind of sets us apart? I think when you look at a remote workforce, there's a lot of different components that come into play and how you support that effectively. First one being, just pure connectivity. How do we get those remote workers connected back to the corporate office? And that usually revolves around some type of VPN technology, which, we're able to work with quite a number of vendors there and really, work with the customer on kind of their ground, if you will. In other words, we're not necessarily pushing an agenda there. We can help them out both from just a overall kind of ensuring they've chosen the right technology. Most of them already have it, ensuring that it's set up correctly, that it's able to scale correctly to support what may become a huge remote workforce at this point. And then obviously, if they do need to add some licensing or some additional hardware to scale that technology, we can help them there as well. So kind of the next phase of supporting that workforce then is providing them a easy to use or a similar experience to what they would have in the office. So, and this is especially useful for customers who still use actual desktop PCs in the office as opposed to laptops. So you send somebody home with their laptop, they have an environment to work in that they're used to working in. If you have a desktop, they don't really have that similar experience, right? So then you're looking at some type of VDI or virtual desktop or remote desktop type application. And there again, we work with a lot of the major players in that space, whether that be Citrix or Amazon or VMware or Nutanix or whoever. So there again, we can consult with customers on, not only if they don't have something, helping them choose the right solution, getting it deployed, but also helping them expand and scale an existing solution, again, no matter what they have. Another layer to this is providing identity services. So obviously, as a large population needs to connect remotely, you need to make sure you know who they are and that they're connecting from an approved device. So then that's all around identity management. And so that can get into technologies like Active Directory. It can also get into two-factor authentication technologies, privilege access management, type technologies. So here again, a lot of things to consider, and we start by kind of consulting with them around their needs and their priorities and requirements, and then help them make the best of what they have or choose new technology if it's necessary. Also ensuring that if they need to follow some type of regulation or compliance, that as they make those choices and get those things deployed, that they are following, good practices that follow along maybe a NIST standard or something like that. Probably the last area that's of concern in this case would be, well, maybe two more areas. Next to last might be around just securing those endpoints. So, typically when you're working from within the walls of the office, you've got a lot of security technologies between you and the internet. But if you're working from home or the local coffee shop or wherever it might be, you're typically not as protected anymore. So, how do we manage all those endpoints and ensure they get the same level of protection and policy application that they might have while they're in the office? And so some of those technologies in that case might be MDM, it might be endpoint security, it might be cloud-based security and filtering technologies, things like that. The last space, and honestly, it's a space we don't really get into too much, are the collaboration tools. So, things like Microsoft Teams and WebEx and Zoom and some of those things. I don't know that we play in that space quite as much, but there's certainly a lot of need there for customers who maybe haven't been using a ton of those types of tools, especially remotely previously, and now all of a sudden they need to adopt those tools quickly. A lot of customers are looking for some help in maybe training their end user base to better utilize those tools. But what I think sets us apart really is the fact that we can work across all of those areas and that we can consult with them across all of those areas. We've worked with a lot of different tools within each of those spaces, so it's not like we have a particular religion around any one tool set. And, we find that we've been able to help quite a few customers on different platforms already.
So, with the current situation the way it is, I think we can anticipate a lot of companies being forced to go remote, almost like against their will, companies that don't probably have a lot of experience with it yet, or have even maybe avoided it for one reason or another. So, what do you see as being the biggest challenge? How do the challenges differ between a company that's already remote and just wants to upgrade versus a company, that's been putting it off and now they're forced to go remote quickly?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if you've already been supporting at least a minimal remote workforce, you've probably got the policies in place. You've probably got a good bit of the technologies in place to support it, and you've probably already thought through a lot of the security implications and dealt with some of those issues. So, in reality, for those companies, it's really about scaling what they have and maybe tightening up a couple things here or there, but it's really about scale. With the companies who haven't done a whole lot of that before, it's thinking through all of that, right? It's the policy side, who should be allowed to connect. Well, in this case, probably everybody, but do I allow them free access to everything? Do I, limit their access to just what they need to get to? How am I going to do that? How do I secure their endpoints? How do I ensure that they're not going to, bring malware into my environment when they get outside the corporate, kind of security boundaries, if you will? How do I give them access to the tools that they're used to using every day, right? If you're not on the corporate network anymore. So I think there's a lot more work to do, obviously, if you haven't been down that road previously. So, my advice to both is don't wait. On the one hand, the guys that need to scale, if you just need licensing to scale, you're probably not in a bad place. If you also need some hardware to scale at this point, you might be in a bad place only because supply chain issues being what they are today. In some cases, we are weeks and weeks out from shipping certain types of hardware right now. So, I would get on that pretty quickly. On the flip side, the guys who haven't gone down the path yet, because you really should consider a lot of those more policy and security driven ideas first before you start choosing technology. You've got some work to do up front. And again, don't wait. Start engaging with someone sooner rather than later to work through that so that you can get to the point where you can deploy technology and get testing and supporting your remote workforce.
So how does Anexinet specifically help a company that's trying to get remote quickly and ramp up their remote workforce? How are we able to accelerate that process for them?
Sure. I think because we've worked across all of these areas in the past with multiple customers, with multiple technologies, I think we're able to accelerate that process from the standpoint of we generally know what you need to do from a policy standpoint. We know the types of tools that you should have in place to remain compliant with the various, standards, NIST or any of those types of things. And of course, we know most of the common technologies out there, and so we can help you choose the appropriate one based on your environment, your applications, and your people. We can help you choose that pretty quickly. So, I'd look at it as, we still have to go through all of that, but we're able to accelerate that. And I don't know if there's an exact number, but because we've seen so much, I think, it wouldn't be crazy to say we could probably accelerate that 3 to 5x.
Do you have any predictions for where this is going over the next 3 to 4 months, given the supply chain issues? And
yeah, no, I hate to make any crazy predictions based on what we're seeing out there. All I would say is honestly, I think the supply chain issues probably take 6 months to clear up. I think we're in a situation where no matter what happens, the disruption to supply chain has already happened, and it's going to take time for that to really shake out. Whether or not, we're all working from home for 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years, I have no idea. Let's all cross our fingers and hope it's more like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Would you have any suggestions for companies other than companies that need to ramp up their remote workforce, other than hiring Anexinet to come and help them out for just strategies that they might pursue?
I guess take it in a methodical fashion, work through each of these areas that we've discussed as far as, don't just focus on connectivity or don't just focus on security or, policy. You've got to focus on all of it. But work through it methodically, step by step. Deploy a smaller environment first that has the ability to scale. That way you can get it out there quickly and do some testing and make sure you refine and work out any issues, and then be ready to scale quickly. Make sure that anything you buy has the capability to scale to support your entire workforce.
I know that some of our areas of focus for remote workforces include VDI, remote desktop, VPN, identity management, two-factor authentication, and mobile security and policy management. You've mentioned some of these already. Do you want to provide any more detail on any of these specific elements?
I guess maybe the one area that really we could go into a little bit of detail would be like the remote desktop or VDI space. That was once dominated by a lot of on-prem technology. So your Citrix and VMware type technologies. A lot of our customers currently use those. They're a little bit more difficult to scale as you look forward, just because it's hardware based and you need to scale via the hardware. If you're looking to scale quickly and efficiently, I would be looking at cloud technologies, whether that be from AWS or Microsoft or even Citrix in the cloud. That'll give you an easy place to start, but also a very quick place to scale without having to worry about supply chain issues around hardware. But of course, then that brings some other some other concerns around, how do I connect to my applications if I'm using cloud VDI technology, and how do I ensure I've got security around the data and all of that. So it doesn't come without its own set of concerns that you need to work through as well.
I'm just thinking this is like truly a global pandemic. So many of these companies already have remote workforces around the world. And I'm wondering if you've seen any ways that the global workforce is already being affected. I don't know if you...
I've talked to customers already about increasing their remote worker capability in their European offices, for instance. It's certainly a conversation, I think, for every customer and every office they have. As this pandemic grows in each geography, they're going to have the same issues. So certainly Europe and East and Asia are they're being hit with it right now, and we're having conversations around similar topics. For us, for us, we just have to be cognizant of some of the local, quote unquote, operating rules in those areas with respect to some of the security frameworks and needs in those areas.
Remote working has been around for quite a while now. What are some of the ways that the technology has evolved recently to make it better, more efficient, more secure?
That's a good question. I don't know that a lot of the core technologies have changed much over the last few years, but I think there's a heightened focus on the security side. So whereas in the past it was rare to use two-factor authentication, now it's a requirement according to a lot of the compliance legislation, whether that be NIST or some of the other ones out there. So I think, like I said, the underlying technologies, whether it be the collab tools or the VPN technologies, or even the remote desktop VDI technology, they're all the same, really, as they were 5 or 6, 8 years ago. But I think most organizations are hyper focused on how to properly secure all of those folks who are outside the corporate security boundary now.
That's great. Ryan, if you could just let our listeners know what you think is the best way for them to get a hold of us and to get started with this process.
Yeah, certainly contact your account manager, contact us directly. We are ready to help. We've got multiple consultants who can help in this space, and we're literally just a phone call away.
How long does it usually take? I mean, can you give me some examples of like an average medium-sized company, like how long it would take to actually ramp up a remote workforce?
Unfortunately, it does come down to one of those, well, it depends. So if they've got a lot of the underlying technologies and really it's just a matter of scaling what they have, it's probably some conversations for us to understand what they have, what the platforms are. We can do a little research to see the best way to scale those platforms, and then potentially if it's literally just software licensing, that can be turned around in a day. If they need hardware, it's really dependent on what the logistics situation is for those particular platforms at this point. If it's somebody just getting started in this and they really don't have a lot of the underlying technology, those initial conversations are probably going to be spread out over the course of a week or a week and a half, so we can really understand the business and legal requirements they might have, and the technology requirements, and then walk them through what we would see as their best options in those spaces. And then again, depending on the logistics side, it could be anywhere from a week to several weeks to get those up and running for them.
Well, that's great. That's all the questions I have for you, Ryan, and I'll let you go and get some tea or something.
I've drank more tea in the last 2 weeks than I think I've drank in a long time.
Thanks again for hopping on, and hopefully this will do some companies a lot of good.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it.
Take care, man. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Modern Digital Enterprise, the digital transformation podcast from Anexinet, part of the Anexinet Podcast Network. Keep those hands clean, everybody.
As a leading technology consultancy and reseller, Anexinet helps clients provide a complete digital experience for customers, employees, and end users. We accomplish this through our holistic approach, which encompasses all aspects of today's digital journey, end-to-end. Anexinet partners with top technology vendors like HPE to offer products and services that enhance the digital experience across customer engagement, enterprise mobility, cloud and hybrid IT, and analytics. Because great digital experiences rely on the smooth operation of all interconnected elements. From strategy through execution, we deliver custom multi-channel applications, including web, mobile, chat, and voice. With self-service apps for customer loyalty and enterprise apps that streamline internal processes, now you can reimagine legacy applications to propel your business forward. Anexinet also helps you embrace modern cloud and hybrid IT infrastructure to provide a seamless experience at every touchpoint, empowering you to recover quickly from disaster, scale to meet demand, and automate systems for perfect performance 24/7. And to maximize your competitive advantage, we ensure you always deliver the best experience possible by continuously honing your digital solutions through data-driven insights. So, how do you know if your business has what it takes to provide the complete digital experience? One that sets you apart, maintains competitive edge, and turns users into passionate fans? Simple. Just give us a call. Together, we can deepen engagement and make every digital experience remarkable.